I never thought I would be the kind of person who ends up as the subject of a Reddit revenge video, especially not like this. If you had asked me a year ago where my life was headed, I would have told you I was engaged, stable, and finally building something peaceful after a complicated childhood. Instead, I'm sitting in my old bedroom at my parents' house, my engagement effectively over, trying to understand how my fiancé managed to blow up both of our lives over something that happened in middle school. I'm a woman in my 30s, and until very recently, I was engaged to another woman in her 30s. I'm using a throwaway account because this situation has already spiraled into public spaces I never wanted it to reach. I'm angry, embarrassed, and grieving all at once, and writing this out is the only way I can make sense of it. My fiancé, let's call her Ella, and I were together for 5 years. For most of that time, I thought I knew her better than anyone. She was gentle, awkward in a way that felt sincere, and deeply sensitive to other people's feelings. She identified as butch and always had, even back when adults insisted on calling her a tomboy. Like a lot of queer kids, she had a rough time growing up. She didn't fit neatly into gender expectations, and kids noticed. She was teased, isolated, and often treated like an oddity. I believed her when she talked about those experiences. I didn't just believe her, I related to them. I'm queer too, and while our childhoods weren't identical, I understood what it felt like to grow up feeling out of place. That shared understanding was part of what bonded us early on. Ella also has ADHD. She's impulsive, emotionally intense, and a textbook people pleaser. She wants to be liked so badly that she sometimes bends herself into uncomfortable shapes to earn approval. It caused some friction in our relationship, but it was never anything we couldn't talk through. For most of our time together, she was functional and stable. She had a job she cared about, working with kids. She had anxiety, yes, but it was something she managed, not something that consumed her entire identity. Then, about a year ago, everything started to change. Ella joined an online anxiety support group. At first, I thought it was a positive step. She'd been feeling more on edge than usual, and I encouraged her to seek extra support. Through that group, she found a therapist. I didn't question it at first. Therapy has helped me before, and I wanted to be supportive. But almost immediately, I noticed something was different. After sessions, Ella didn't seem calmer or more grounded. She seemed agitated, energized in a restless way. She talked constantly about how validating her therapist was, how for the first time someone truly understood her. That sounded good on the surface, but over time it started to feel off. Her therapist never challenged her, not once. Every feeling Ella had was framed as completely justified. Every negative experience was reframed as something done to her, never something that involved complexity, context, or mutual responsibility. Slowly, her therapist began steering everything back to Ella's childhood, specifically to middle school. At first, Ella just talked more about how awkward she'd been, how she never fit in, how people thought she was gross or weird. Then she started talking about one specific person from that time, a girl I'll call Bev. According to Ella, Bev was the first person who ever truly humiliated her, the first real bully, the person who set off a chain reaction that defined her entire adolescence and somehow her adult life. Her therapist latched onto this immediately. Bev became the centerpiece of Ella's narrative. When Ella finally described what Bev actually did, I remember sitting there, waiting for something more, some major incident, some repeated pattern of cruelty. What she described was this. In middle school, Ella used gross-out humor constantly. She burped loudly in the cafeteria, she made fart noises, she deliberately tried to be disruptive because the boys she hung around with thought it was funny. One day, Bev called her a pig for belching at the lunch table. That was it. I'm not saying that being insulted at that age doesn't hurt. Middle school is brutal, and kids can be thoughtless and cruel. Ella's feelings about it were real, but the way her therapist framed this single incident as the root cause of decades of anxiety and self-esteem issues set off alarm bells for me. I tried to gently add perspective. I suggested that kids that age react badly to behavior they find disruptive. I pointed out that the boys encouraging Ella's antics might have played a bigger role in setting her up for social rejection. I wasn't dismissive, I wasn't cruel, I was careful. Ella shut it down immediately. According to her therapist, Bev wasn't just a rude kid, she was an abuser, a bully who inflicted lasting trauma, someone who needed to be held accountable. And Ella clung to that framing like it explained everything wrong in her life. At first, Ella said she just wanted closure. She talked about how unfair it was that Bev probably didn't even remember the incident, while Ella had carried it with her for decades. Then the language started to change. She talked about how Bev got away with it, about how unfair it was that Bev probably had a good life now. That comparison poisoned everything. Ella started bringing Bev up constantly, over dinner, while watching TV, in the car. It didn't matter what we were talking about, somehow it always circled back to her. I told Ella firmly but calmly that confronting someone over something that happened in 6th grade was not healthy. I told her it wouldn't bring peace. I told her to talk to her therapist about letting it go. Her therapist encouraged her to dig deeper. Weeks later, I found out Ella had searched for Bev online. She found her on Facebook. She was married, she had kids, she had a career. She was living a normal, private life, completely unaware that someone from her childhood had decided she was the villain in a story she didn't even remember being part of. At first, Ella claimed she was just curious, just looking, just trying to understand who Bev had become, but it didn't stop there. She started checking her profile daily, monitoring her posts, her photos, her comments, her workplace. She called it research. She said she needed context. Then things crossed a line. Ella created burner accounts. She left disturbing comments on Bev's social media, accusing her of being abusive, cruel, and manipulative. She framed herself as a survivor seeking justice. She contacted Bev's workplace anonymously and told them they had hired a psychopath. She left fake Google reviews targeting Bev's job. At one point, I found out she had called the police to request welfare checks on Bev's children, implying abuse. When I confronted her, I felt physically sick. I told her this wasn't accountability, it was harassment. I told her she was endangering an innocent family. She broke down crying and said she didn't understand her trauma. She said her therapist supported her. She said Reddit supported her. And she was right about one thing. She had an audience. Ella posted about what she was doing online, framing it as pro-revenge. Strangers cheered her on. They told her she was brave, that she was standing up to an abuser, that this was healing looked like. Every comment like that pushed her further. The final escalation came when Ella decided she needed to confront Bev in person. She went to Bev's workplace. She recorded it. Bev didn't even recognize her at first. That was the moment everything collapsed. Bev pressed charges because this wasn't revenge fantasy anymore. It was criminal harassment. There was a paper trail, weeks of documented behavior, burner accounts, calls, false reports, and online posts. Ella had been proud of it all. She was arrested. Within days, Ella lost her job. She worked with kids, and once her online behavior became public, her employer had no choice. She was devastated, but still refused to take responsibility. Instead, she claimed her actions were the result of PTSD, not a formal diagnosis, a suggestion from the same therapist who had encouraged the spiral. She framed herself as the real victim of Bev, of the justice system, of a society that protects abusers. That's when something inside me finally broke. I realized the woman I loved wasn't just hurting, she was dangerous in a quiet, obsessive way. She genuinely believed she was the hero of this story and that anyone who disagreed with her was enabling abuse. I reached out to Bev myself, not to reopen wounds, but to apologize. Bev begged me to leave her alone. She apologized for calling a kid gross over 20 years ago. She didn't owe anyone that apology, but she gave it anyway. I told her she didn't deserve any of this. When Ella found out, she was furious. She accused me of betraying her. All I said was